Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right?
Oh!
The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
and we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs. Hey, welcome into the Arrowhead Addict podcast. It is Thursday, May 2nd. And I'm here, Patrick Allen, on Thursday with you as always. With me today again is Matt Verderame, staff writer, NFL staff writer over at Sports Illustrated. Verderame, I'm having a kid this month.
You are. Is it this month? I thought it was the beginning of June. No, it's this month?
So the due date's June 4th, okay. But due to some maternal age and things like that.
I've been there.
Yeah. Will be induced a week early. So it could be like maybe June 1st, depends on the scheduling at the hospital. But like, I want to get him out of there as soon as possible. Like he's pretty much ready. I don't want him to overcook. Like, let's just do this thing. Plus I get to go on leave. Right. So
yeah. Right. I mean, at this point, just start screaming at him. Yeah. Just have him on, tell Mag to have him on May 27th. Cause that's easy to remember. That's Maisie was born on September 27th.
Okay.
So, just go that route. And, then I'll never forget his birthday. There you go.
Keep it 27. I'm looking at this thing, but back in the really early days of the pregnancy, back when I was torturing myself and nervous about miscarriage and all those horrible things that can happen, I had this like miscarriage odds calculator that I was just looking at every day.
That's number one. That can't be good.
No, but I was going to worry about it anyway. So like seeing the percentage go down every day, like helped me. And now I'm looking, they've got a labor probability calculator. And so now I can torture Mag and be like, 1% chance you're going to go into labor today and a 99% chance you're going to labor after today. So she loves me, as you can imagine, as she's getting miserable, uncomfortable, can't sleep, has to pee all the time, all the fun things that happened in that last few weeks.
Yeah, man. I think probably like week 30, week 31, where Steph got this like full length body pillow, and it felt like we had like a third person in the bed.
Yeah,
I was basically just like on the side of the bed, like, what are you gonna say? Like, hey, come on. I need some space over here, right? Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, these things happen. But no, hey, look, man, you're in the home stretch. Mag's in the home stretch, and before you know it, you'll be a dad. You'll be hanging out with the kid.
Yeah, man. Mag got that pillow, and she got it. She started using that right at the beginning of the second trimester, probably as a defense mechanism, because my left arm has not been on the bed since the second trimester started. Yeah. That thing is so huge. Oh, of course, you want to give them all the room. You can't complain. It's bad. It's bad news. And once he shows up, then I'll just be out of the bed completely. And that'll be that. But the good news is that so this is I've got 2 more shows after, and then I'm heading out on. I'm going to go out a week early unless, of course, he shows up. That's the good news for everybody. And then the bad news is you'll be taking over while I'm on leave.
Yeah, it's just even worse news. I'll be here. I don't even know how long you're on leave for, but whatever that is, yeah, I'm running the show here. So this mini media Sports Illustrated thing worked out really well, timing wise, for you and your time away. But I'm happy to step in and absolutely soil the reputation of the show. It'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You helped soil it from the start, and now you're going to bring it back to its former glory. Shout out to all of our members. It's the Arrowhead Addict podcast. We appreciate you all joining us every Thursday. And of course, we have a Tuesday show and a Wednesday show as well. This is the first time, Verderame, you and I have talked, or that you've been on the show since the draft. So there's a ton to get to. The Travis Kelce contract, that's a thing that happened. So we're going to deal with all of that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, I want to talk about whether or not we think the Chiefs can run this thing back and have a little bit of an extended conversation about what's possible, the history of the NFL. Obviously, it's never happened before. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And we'll want to hear from all of you out in the chat, those of you that are watching us live on YouTube. Before we go any further, though, I got to let you know that DraftKings is offering a fantastic sign-up bonus for new users. New users can place a $5 first bet on any sport to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets. When you sign up with our code, Arrowhead, you will receive a no-sweat single-game parlay every single day. The best part is you'll get both rewards even if your first bet loses. So use our code Arrowhead. It not only gets you these bonuses, but you're directly supporting this podcast. If you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure to use our code Arrowhead to maximize your first bets. It's available only to new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in a legal gambling state. So please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check out the episode description for the full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. So let's dive into this draft class, Verderame. So let's start with Xavier Worthy, which my favorite part of the entire exercise, well, there were a couple of things, but like the Bills, the fact that the Bills actually traded with the Chiefs, just every time I think about it, I start cracking up. It doesn't make any sense. But my favorite thing was that, and I forget who tweeted this, so forgive me to the reporter, who tweeted, I got a text from an AFC front office executive on the Chiefs getting Worthy, and it was, in quotes, kids, cover your ears, fuck me. As a Chiefs fan, how happy and delighted does it make you that at least one front office executive saw the Chiefs got Xavier Worthy and was like,
I mean, I've said it in a lot of places over the last week. I thought that was the most insane thing that happened in the draft, other than the Falcons forgetting they'd signed Kirk Cousins. The Michael Penix thing is just staggering. Like, there should be a 30 for 30 on that tomorrow. But the Bills trading with the Chiefs, I don't care what your opinion is of Xavier Worthy. It doesn't even matter. Because nobody knows if he's going to be good, bad, mediocre. Nobody has a clue yet. For the Bills to help them get whoever they want, because Brandon Beane's gone on the record since and said, like, well, we didn't know who they were going to take. Okay, fine. That's not a defense. Like, it doesn't matter. Why would you help them? You know, you didn't see the Colts giving the Patriots help when they were fighting for the AFC every year. You know, the Cowboys and the Niners weren't swapping draft picks in 1994. Like, it just doesn't happen. The Bills doing that was insane. Was insane. Like, I don't care. I don't want to hear any defense for, like, well, you know, the Bills felt like they got value. First of all, if you look at the trade chart, they didn't get value. They pretty much got exactly what they're supposed to get. Secondly, you gave Kansas City who they wanted. Now it ended up being Xavier Worthy. Obviously, there's pluses and minuses. And by the way, the person tweeted that out was Jordan Schultz. But yeah, it's just, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe the Bills did that. Like, that's one of those things. If he doesn't end up being good, it'll be a footnote in history, whatever. Nobody cares. If he ends up being a really good player and he's torching the Bills, you know what that's going to be like up in Buffalo? If they're in a playoff game against Kansas City this year and he's just running up and down the field nonstop, I could not believe that the Bills did that.
Yeah, why are you helping the Chiefs? Don't help them. Like, Brett Veach, we know Brett Veach was trying to trade up last year to try to get a wide receiver, and teams, he could not find a partner. Teams were reluctant to help the Chiefs.
Buffalo.
Right? And look what happened, right? Look what happened. The Chiefs, they drafted a guy. They had to stay put. They drafted a guy who didn't play very much, didn't make much of an impact. We'll see how all that works out. But, like, the NFL kind of, like, if you're the NFL and you're sick of the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl every year, the NFL kind of got it right last year. They're like, nah, figure it out. Or, like, you got to offer us a king's ransom or we're not helping you.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs, their first round pick didn't have an impact on them. Now, of course, the guy they took in the second round helped them win the Super Bowl. So there's only so much you can do. And yes, you've got to look out for your own franchise. And if you think you need extra picks in your Buffalo, like, I get it to a degree, but not them. there's got to be somebody willing to trade with you if you want to get a few extra picks. Like, not, and you're right, man. Like, this is the team that has ended your season more than any other team in the NFL in this era. And oh, by the way, it's the team that you gave a once in a generation quarterback to by trading with them years ago. That alone, if I was in the Buffalo organization, I was like, listen, we do not trade with the Chiefs in the first round. Tell them to lose our number. Don't call us on day one of the NFL draft ever again.
I was just floored. I was floored. I mean, I don't get it. The Bills had like 12 picks going into that draft. It's not like they had like 4 picks. It was like, okay. No. I mean, you had 1 million picks. And the whole draft, I didn't understand what they did. They traded out of the first round. They took Keon Coleman, who is very big, does not run good routes, does not get separation, and runs a 4.61. I mean, there are a lot of linebackers who run faster than 4.61, like 4.5 range. Like that's you are going to have to be an incredible route runner to overcome that. I mean, that's not like 4.45, 4.5 flat. Like that is, historically speaking, that is a rough thing to overcome. And I know I've had a few people say to me already, well, did you know Jerry Rice ran a 4.6? Yes, I did. I also know he was drafted in 1985. Yes, I was aware of that. He's also probably the greatest route runner of all time. So, like, if Keon Coleman runs routes like Jerry Rice, he'll be great. I mean, I feel confident in that. If he runs routes like Larry Fitzgerald, he'll be great. He doesn't run routes like Jerry Rice or Larry Fitzgerald. And so I don't understand, like, if you're the Bills, traded back twice, you lose a fifth-year option, you never take a second wide receiver. It was all bizarre, but the weirdest part of it was trading with Kansas City. They will be, if Worthy turns into a really good player, like I'm not even saying Tyreek Hill, but let's say he turns into like Jalen Waddle, really good player, borderline Pro Bowl. If you're the Bill, like you're tied to that forever. You're tied to the fact you just gave the Chiefs that guy. I think it's indefensible personally, but yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe they did it.
The Chiefs have proven that they don't need help. So why you would do that is insane. And I want to get more into Worthy in just a second, but just while we're talking about, and I think that this is starting to break Bills fans who I love Bills fans. They're my kind of people. Like salt of the earth, like freezing ass cold. Like I grew up in Northeast Ohio, Kansas City. Like these are kind of football fans I relate to. Cleveland fans, Pittsburgh, but God bless these Bills fans. They've been through a lot, 4 Super Bowls, came away with nothing. Then you get Josh Allen. You think, all right, like this is it. And then Patrick Mahomes is there. Your team, I mean, they're traumatized.
Yes.
But this guy tweeted something that is, I think, quite possibly the most insane. And listen, it's a high bar. It is a high bar. I was going
to say, this is a staggeringly high bar considering what we're about to talk about.
The most insane take I have ever seen on Twitter. Luke Russert, who's works at MSNBC.
I know who he is. He's God, I'm blanking. Tim Russert.
Tim Russert,
great Tim Russert. He's his
son. The man's lost his mind. Here's what he tweeted. Bills are playing a game of hoarding young impact players at cost and under team control. We also won the Mahomes trade. The pieces received then got us back from obscurity. We'll win this too. Trust the process. # Bills Mafia. We also won the Mahomes trade.
I was on board with that tweet until that point. I have seen more than a few people argue this from that corner of the earth who are like, hey, got Tre'Davious White and also like turned it into like Tremaine Edmonds and Saron Neal and whoever the hell else. Here's the problem. If you were the Bills and you could trade those players for Patrick Mahomes, you would do it so fast, your head would spin. Like, there's no winning that trade. That trade. Now, I get the whole, like, hey, they got all these players and they also got Allen. Well, guess what? Like, Edmonds is gone and White's gone and Neal is gone and none of them won anything. and Mahomes has 3 Super Bowl rings. Like,
They're all gone. They're not even on the team
kind of
anymore.
hard to argue that you won that trade. Like, it's if you're a Bills fan, I understand sitting there saying, "Hey, got Josh Allen in the end, so like things are good." Okay, he's not Mahomes; he's a great player. Fine. Yeah, you haven't gotten to a Super Bowl yet, and the guy that the Chiefs traded for is basically God in cleats and has 3 rings and has been to 4 of them. So, like, yeah, it's kind of hard. The one argument I never understand out of Buffalo is this idea that, like, well, if Mahomes had gone to Buffalo, he wouldn't have won yet because there's no talent. It's like that is the thing. Look, I said this on my own pod, the Matt Verderame show on Patreon. I said this on to my super followers on Twitter the other day. Because this really rankles me and annoys me because I feel like it's so disingenuous. And few things annoy me more than people who are disingenuous. Look, you can't sit there and say, well, Mahomes wouldn't win in Buffalo because look what Allen's been surrounded by. But then the same guys are like Brandon Bean, big baller Bean. Like, well, which one is it? You can't have them both. You can't be like the GM's unbelievable. And, oh, by the way, the quarterback has nothing to work with, and that's why he doesn't win. Like, either Allen is somewhat overrated or the roster hasn't been that good, but like you can't sit there and say, well, Beans is genius, but then Allen has nothing to work with, which by the way, to me, like the answer is really in the middle. Like Allen's had some very good rosters around them. They haven't won. They haven't won because they can't beat Mahomes. Like sometimes the obvious answer is the truth. The Bills have had good teams. Brandon Beans had some hits, had some misses, had some big misses at times. The Bills are ringless for one reason, because they can't get by Mahomes. That's why they're ringless. 3 of the last 4 years, they've gone home at his hands. That's it. And until they can figure that out, they're never going to get a ring.
Yeah, it's Mahomes derangement syndrome. Let's call it that. Shout out to Nick Black in the chat who says Northeast Ohio in the house. Let me know where you're from, Nick. What town? All right, let's get into Xavier Worthy. So you've had a week to sit on this. Look, people keep talking. This is the one thing I don't like about this. And I don't even need to ask you the question I wrote down because I know what your answer is going to be, which was, the Tyreek Hill comparisons are unfair. Just because this guy's fast, just stop. Just people like it's a segment on ESPN.
Tyreek Hill's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Right. This guy is nobody is Tyreek Hill. Nobody will ever be Tyreek Hill. He's one of one. That's it. But I understand what people are getting at, which is, can he fill this void that the Chiefs have had about having kind of this game-breaking speed, big play person? Do you think he can? And do you think he's more than that?
Here's what I think about Xavier Worthy. I think we're looking at it in a lot of ways from the wrong perspective. So everybody's focused on one of 2 things. He's either he's 165 pounds or that he runs a 4.21 40. And I get that because both those things are outliers. So like that's why everybody looks at him and says, well, he's this or he's that. I think the reality is the Chiefs are going to use him all over the field. They're going to use him as a slot guy. They're going to put him out wide. They'll probably even start him in the backfield, motion him out. Like they'll do all kinds of things. That's what Andy Reid does. I do think that his presence, along with Hollywood Brown, does a few things. When those 2 guys are on the field together, the Chiefs know what coverages they're getting. Like you've got to play 2 high safety. You have to. If you play a 1 high against that duo of receivers, you're begging for a deep ball over your head. And the Chiefs are dying to throw that ball. I mean, all Mahomes is going to do is take the snap and look at wherever that safety's going. And whoever he's not going toward, the ball's going that way. I think Worthy opens up some things underneath for Rice and for Kelce. I think he opens up the run game a little bit. I think that I don't want to say that was as big of a reason as Worthy's talent itself is why they took him. I think Worthy's talent is the biggest reason, but like that factors in. And I do think that last year, look, they clearly were frustrated with how they had to play offense. And they should be. Their offense was atrocious last year for most of it. Like they were constantly beating themselves, dropping balls. And when they were moving, it was in drips and drabs because they couldn't do anything deep. They had to manufacture everything. Like I do think there is a little bit of that too here where the Chiefs are like, listen, we got it. We got to at least have the threat of stretching the field. And if we can't go over the top because everybody's just playing too deep and staying on, then at least we're going to get chunk plays by throwing these crossers and these seam routes or anything else. So I think Worthy's going to be like a lot of Chiefs rookie receivers. I think he's going to be very slowly brought along the first half of next year. The only caveat to that is I don't know what's going on with Rashee Rice. And if Rice is suspended for half the season, then maybe the Chiefs are going to have to bring him along a little quicker than they'd want. But even with that said, look at what that receiving core was a year ago, and they didn't do that with Rice. They were patient. They sat there. I would expect them to say, even if it means losing one more game in the first 8 and they're 6-2 instead of 7-1, they'll bring Worthy along at the rate they think they need to bring him along at. And I would expect him to be a lot more productive in the second half of the year than the first half of the year.
Yeah, and I think they can use him a little bit more like they used Tyreek Hill in his rookie season, where whereas like Rashee Rice, like you're not going to be doing too many jet sweeps with Rashee Rice and those types of things. I think they'll use him in this new kickoff configuration.
There's no question,
right? And so now you've got something, and there's a lot less risk for him because people aren't going to be at full speed. It's a lot more. I was watching Bill Belichick talk. By the way, I don't know how much of the Bill Belichick stuff you've got. Like when he was on McAfee during the draft, I know we were all busy and working.
Yeah.
It's just been fantastic. Like having Bill Belichick acting as an analyst is like, give me all of it. I want to hear everything. He's super engaging. Like everything he has to say is really interesting. I saw him tell a story the other day about Randy Moss and like trading for Randy Moss and getting, calling up Al Davis and, pulling off that trade. And then him talking to Randy and, Randy's like, Randy, how are you going to beat this coverage? And Randy's like, you're not going to see that coverage with me. You're going to get cover 2. And him being like, it's just so it's so great. But I think that he was talking about the new kickoff rule. And he said, it's more like a football play now than really is a kickoff. And he said, you better have 2 really good returners back there, because if you only have one, they're kicking it to the other guy and there's not gonna be anything you can do about it. And so, with the Chiefs going and getting the rugby player, they still have Kadarius Toney on the roster. They don't really have anything to gain they have nothing to gain financially from cutting Kadarius Toney. They might have something to gain in the locker room.
Yes.
They've got options now that you throw Worthy into this situation.
Yeah. No, listen, I think that's a huge part of it. I think that you're going to see a lot of returns that swing games this year. Like it's going to be a factor in games in a way it just hasn't been recently because the NFL is basically taking it out of the sport with the way the rules have been. But no, I think it's going to be a factor. It has to be a factor. I expect with Tobe, look, with Dave Tobe, even under the current rules or the former rules, whatever you want to say, last year's rules, the Chiefs are basically like, listen, if he kicks it 5 rows deep, run it out, whatever it takes. Like they will be aggressive, God knows. So I would expect that Worthy is going to see plenty of returns. He saw him in Texas. He was a punt returner in Texas. So I would expect that you will see plenty of him back deep for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and it's going to be exciting to see what Andy Reid cooks up along with Dave Tobe for this new approach. I'm very excited about it. All right, let's move on. Second round pick here. I have not tried to say this gentleman's last name out loud yet, but it's Kingsley Suamataia. It's that extra syllable that is tripping me up. Fantastic. I've read a few different reviews and lists about the Chiefs draft, and this is a name that keeps popping up. Our pal used to do a show with you, Jeff Schwartz, also of course used to play with the Chiefs, knows a little something about offensive line play, had a nice review on Twitter of Kingsley and thinks that he could potentially be pretty good and start right away if he can clean some things up. What have you been hearing about this pick?
I think a lot of people feel like it's pretty good value. I know there were some people who mocked him late first. I think most people felt he would go like early to mid-second. I think the Chiefs believed he was going to go about mid-second. And so that's a nice pick. They moved up one spot, but big deal. They moved up from 64 to 63. They swap with the Niners. They get Suamataia. He started for 2 years at BYU, one year right tackle, 1 year left. He was better as a right tackle, but he was fine as a left tackle. He's more of a pass blocker than a run blocker. Although, with that being said, he has limited pass blocking skills, limited pass blocking snaps, because BYU played a very much an RPO system. So he's going to have to learn some things. He's going to have to be brought in and brought along. But I think you'll know how the Chiefs feel about him and Wanya Morris by if they bring in a veteran or not. I mean, if it's August 10th and those two guys are still battling for the job, like I would say it's a good thing.
Yeah. It's I think it's an exciting signing. A lot of people think this could be the answer at left tackle for the Chiefs, and if he is, all the better. But it does tell you at least a little bit something about where they feel Wanya Morris is, which is not ready, right? If they thought he was locked in, could get in there and start at left tackle, they wouldn't have done what they did here. In fact, not to skip around too much in the draft here, but they went on to take a couple more offensive linemen in this draft in the 5th round and in the 7th round. So they're stocking up on offensive linemen. It's a offensive line and DBs late in the draft. Tells you a little bit about where they think those position groups need to restock the fridge, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also too, look, let's be real here. I mean, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith are in the final years of their contracts. I don't think both guys are walking out the door, but one of them could. Joe Tooney has 2 years left in his deal, but it's really like 2 one-year deals. So there are moving parts here potentially. And also too, like they had to replace Nick Allegretti. Nick Allegretti left in free agency. So, you look at a lot of different things. I mean, and look, the way this season, could unfold. I mean, maybe we get halfway through training camp and the Chiefs are like, we want Donovan Smith to come back in. They bring him back in. Maybe he replaces a guy like Niang. So I do think it is a little bit in flux. I don't think it's a bad thing that you bring in those extra pieces, Enhance in the 7th round and Norzad in the 5th. Norzad has some versatility. He's played tackle, center, and guard at college. He played tackle at Cornell. He played center guard at Penn State. I think he gives you some of an Allegretti factor there because of that versatility. And look, it's nice to have a guy who in a pinch has at least played in all those spots. Not that you want him starting at right tackle in a game this year for the Chiefs, but it is good that at least he has that experience. So, a little bit of a shuffling of the deck. But, you also got to factor in, too, like Hanson's a 7th round pick. Who knows who makes the team? I mean, there's a very real shot. He doesn't make the roster. So, Norzad will, barring a disaster. And, of course, Sua Matai will. But I think for the Chiefs, it's always good to kind of churn the deck and see what happens because, hey, listen, if these kids are winning jobs, that's great. That's great. That means you got better. So you root for the kids to win jobs and to play well and to get out there and, make the coach's decision difficult. That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move into the tight end position. 4th round, they take Jared Wiley out of TCU, 6'6", 249. Look, nobody's replacing Travis Kelce,
no.
Right? But did you like this pick? Did you think this was the right time to take a tight end? I heard some people were suggesting the Chiefs should try to trade up in the 1st round and get Brock Bowers and get, do these kind of crazy things. What was your opinion of this pick?
I'm going to get to this pick in 1 second, but I wanted to just look up real quick. Like the Chiefs, I know this is a complete left turn, but I'll get back on the road. The Chiefs have $16 million in cap space right now, which is like middle of the league. So if they wanted to do something, they could in terms of like bringing a guy back or bring a veteran in or whatever. Just as a little housekeeping note, as I was looking at it over the cap, I clicked on their 2025 tab just because I was curious, and they barely had the cap going up, which I think it will go up more. But the Chiefs are in a pretty good position cap-wise next year too. They're like right in the middle. Not for nothing, not that this matters at all to Chiefs fans. The Saints are $73.4 million over the cap. Like just a staggering. Like every year, it's the old like traditions unlike any other. It really is a tradition unlike any other. They're just constantly over the cap to a hilarious degree. In case you're wondering, the 49ers and Browns also hilariously over the cap.
How do they do that? I mean, like, how are you over the cap in the new league year? How does that work for those who do not know?
You have to be under the cap for the current league year. So they're under the cap for the current league year. In 2025, the Saints are currently projected by over the cap to be $73.4 million over the threshold. because they're projecting that the threshold's 260, which I think it'll be higher than that, a little higher. But the Saints have commitments of over 300 million. 300 million. The Saints are sitting at about, let's see, what do they have here? At 333 million. And how does that happen? I'll tell you how that happens. You've got a cap number of 31.4 for Marshawn Lattimore. You have a cap number of 51.5 for Derek Carr. You have a cap number of $29 million for Alvin Kamara, 15.8 for Taysom Hill, $20 million for Cam Jordan, 29.6 for Ryan Ramczyk. That's out. Carl Granderson. I defy anybody to tell me who Carl Granderson is. He has an $11.7 million cap hit. Chase Young has a void year of $9 million. Tano Passion, former friend of the show here, or friend of the team, $1.8 million in a void year. Nathan Shepard has a $6.5 million hit. Like, that's how. That is just. Oh my God. They are truly the cap gift that just keeps on giving. And like, they've restructured so many of those contracts so many times that they can't even cut guys. Like, to cut them, they create more against the cap. So like, you just have to keep extending and extend. They're eventually going to be an expansion team. So it's going to happen. But Mickey Loomis is looking at it going, not while I'm here. That's the next guy's problem. Have fun with that. But in any event, so I took a massive left turn. Let's get back to Jared Wiley. Jared Wiley is pretty much the exact same size as Travis Kelce coming out of college. So I think that might have been a little bit of like, hey, that's interesting. Really good RAS, the athletic testing type score, RAS. Led the nation in touchdowns for a tight end last year over TCU. He's just a guy, look, he runs a 4.6 flat. So he's got good speed for a tight end. I mean, hell, he's faster than Ken Coleman is. He got good speed, good size. A guy who you can motion out and play wide. You can play down in the trenches as an inline tight end. I think the Chiefs just see him as a guy they could try to develop. I know Matt Miller, he put out his top 100 picks of the draft, like his favorite 100. And I think Wiley was like 19th or something like that. So, and Worthy was 4th for the record. So the Chiefs did well in Matt Miller's eyes.
Well, that brings me to Travis Kelce. Well, actually, before we get to Travis Kelce, let's put a bow on the draft class. They took a couple of DBs as well. Kamal Hayden out of Tennessee. How was your feel about the whole class? Did Brett Veach do a good job here? Did he reach a little bit? There's a lot of trading up, and did he need to trade up all these times? But at least he got the guys he wanted, and that's what matters. I don't know. How did you grade this class? What was your overall opinion?
I gave it a B+. I gave it a B+ over at Sports Illustrated. I thought that if they didn't have to trade up twice and lose some value, I would have given it an A-. There wasn't any one pick that I was like, I just don't think that's a good pick. Like, my favorite pick we didn't even talk about was Jaden Hicks. In terms of just value, I think that kid's going to be good, like really good. I know Dane Brugler over at the Athletic had him rated as his number 1 safety. I do not know enough about every safety in the class by any stretch of the imagination to tell you whether or not I agree with Dane, although Dane certainly knows his stuff. That kid is just a big physical specimen on defense who you can play him all over the place. But yeah, I think it was just a really good class. Like, Worthy to me, I expected him to go off the board in like the early 20s. So I thought the Chiefs did pretty well there. Sua Mataia, I thought was going to go off the board around like 40, 45. I thought they got great value there. Wiley and Hicks, like Wiley probably went a little later than expected. Some people thought Hicks was going to be in the second round. So they got great value. And then Norzad, I thought was fine where he was. Hansen, fine where he was. In the 7th round is probably a little bit of a reach. It could have been the UDFA. At the same point, like, it's 7th round. You're taking a guy on traits, and that's fine. And then 6th round, Kamal Hadden. Who's going to argue with the Chiefs taking a late round corner at this point?
Yeah, right.
And he checks all the boxes for them, right? I mean, he's long, he's physical, he mirrors routes, like he plays the way the Chiefs want to play. He's not the fastest guy. He has an injury history. That's a concern. But the speed, I don't worry about as much. Like, the speed thing, they're pretty good about like kind of staying over top of their corners and all that. Now, sometimes they will, they'll cover zero, stuff like that, but they're pretty good at protecting them with technique. I won't worry about his injuries. But yeah, I think it's good. Like, there wasn't any pick I was like, that's just a bullshit pick. I don't know why they would do that.
Yeah. And I think you made a good point about Hicks. He screams, he's a versatile guy, and he screams Steve Spagnuolo dream to me, right? Yeah. Like, he likes to play those safeties almost as linebackers at times, move them all over the place. So he's looking for guys that are versatile. They don't just cover well. This guy can lay some wood. If you go and look at some of his highlights, maybe a little bit too aggressive sometimes. Got a little dirty Dan in him. But I agree with you. I think it's a good pick. A lot of people had him in the top 100 of players, so they got great value. Yeah. I think it's a solid class, and I think it's a little bit like I don't know what the word I'm looking for, like workman type draft class to me for Brett Veach. It's like he kind of comes in, I've got some needs, I'm going to get good value, and he attacked offensive line. He attacked the defensive backfield. He got his receiver. I think it makes a lot of sense, because when you're Brett Veach, he's not standing back looking at this roster being like, oh my God, I got holes over here and I'm springing leaks and like the ship's going down. Like he has got very specific things he needs to get accomplished each year, because he's done such a good job the last few years of drafting really well that he can get really targeted. And if he's able to continue to do that, because the Chiefs have a very deep team. And so he plugs these holes, then he goes out and he gets some free agents to fill in the remaining space. It's going to be really interesting, because if this is another draft class that hits for him, like if they get 3 starters out of this draft class, if they get their starting left tackle with a second round pick, like, again, now you're just saving money. You're saving money on the offensive line. You're continuing to fill your very expensive position of defensive back with young, cheap guys on their first contract, and it's going to be able to give them ultimate flexibility to keep winning Super Bowls.
Well, and if you save money on Tua Mataia because he turns into a really good left tackle, guess what? Now you can spend the money on Trey Smith, because you have Tua Mataia cheap for 4 more years or 3 more years after this year. Like, it's all that stuff matters. When you draft like that, it allows you to keep guys, premium positions and non-premium positions a lot easier, because you're not, maybe normally you're like, man, we got to pay a guy Trent McDuffie $20 million a year. Well, you're paying him on a rookie deal right now. So that means you can afford to pay other guys. You can afford to pay Mike Dan 3 years, $24 million. You can afford to give Chris Jones a fortune at defensive tackle. You can do it because you have all these guys on rookie deals. By the way, the Kamal Hadden the selection. That selection reminded me, I watched a little bit of him. He reminds me a lot of Jalen Watson. And I went and I looked. So Hadden didn't run at the combine, so there was no official marker for how fast he ran, although he said to have slower speed. Watson ran 4.51. They're identical size-wise. 6'1", 197, 6'1", 196. So long arms, press man, physical. Like, that kid just screamed to me like that he's a Jalen Watson size comp, style comp. Doesn't mean he's going to be as good as him, but the Chiefs have a type. And he fits it.
We will see how it all plays out. All right, let's talk Travis Kelce. So, some people really put me in a pickle here with this Travis Kelce thing. We like to try to jump on, go live, big news happens. I see Travis Kelce contract extension, right? This is the report. He's going to be here until 2027. Matt Connor and I jump on. We break it down. We're kind of beside ourselves because we're like, this isn't a restructure. This is a contract. We do a whole show, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, talking about, hey, man, Travis Kelce is going to be here until 2027. And then I get off. I get some dinner. I'm looking later. I'm like, oh, it's just a restructure, which is what I thought it was. I was really shocked that we were talking about, but I was like, this is what it says. It's a report. It was a mistake. It is a restructure. It is a raise for Travis Kelce, right? Who had slipped to 4th or something as far as the average yearly payout for tight ends. So now he becomes the highest paid tight end in the NFL, as he should be, with a cap number in 2024 of 19.5. It's about 7.8% of the cap, according to Over the Cap. He's all 17 million guaranteed, and then he's signed in 2025 with, and I'm reading this right, Verderame, no guaranteed salary in 2025, but a $12.5 million roster bonus.
Yeah, so essentially it guarantees them. I mean, it's essentially guaranteed if he plays.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, I was in the same boat. I did my emergency pod, and it was annoying to me because I texted somebody close to it before I did the pod, and I was like, "Is this an extension?" Because it's being reported as an extension.
Yeah.
And the text I got back was extremely similar to another person's report out there. I won't pull them up, but it was essentially like, "No, it's not an extension; it's a raise." And then I went on Twitter and was going to report that, which had not been reported yet at that point, had not been put out there that it was that way. So nobody's reporting it that way. And I see like all these like major, like, Paliseros of the world and Schefter is like, "Oh no, it's an extension." I'm thinking like, okay, maybe the source I texted read my text wrong. So I like doubled back to confirm and didn't hear for a while. I'm like, all right, well then maybe I read it wrong. Like I'm wrong. And then it came out and I was like, son of a bitch, I was right. Or well, I wasn't right, but my source, I should have just tweeted it out. But yeah, it is a raise, which is fine. He deserves a raise. I think that to me basically read as like, here's a thank you for all the years of playing and winning and not really being paid the way you ought to be paid. So we're going to take care of you here on the way out the door. I think it's pretty clear these are going to be his last 2 years. I think that's where this thing's headed. I mean, you never know what's in somebody's heart. If he's unbelievable after 2 more years, sure, maybe he keeps going. But, look, for the Chiefs, he's probably how high on the hierarchy of them all time. I mean, if you had to rank the greatest players in Chiefs history, is he on the Mount Rushmore? Probably.
Oh, 100% he's on that.
Right?
I mean, with the Super Bowl success, positional success.
Because you have Mahomes for sure. I think you have to say you have Derek Thomas.
You have to have Derek Thomas.
You kind of have to have either Willie Lanier or Bobby Bell, like one of them.
I think Willie Lanier.
I do too. So then you're into like Kelce, Chris Jones, and I'm excluding coaches. I'm not including coaches here. You're into Buck Buchanan, Len Dawson. Tony Gonzalez. Like, I am probably with you. I think he's on the Mount Rushmore, but like it's actually a harder thing than you'd think. Like when you actually sit down and really think about it, it's not easy. Like is there a world that Len Dawson isn't on? And now, like if you include Len Dawson's like broadcasting career too, he's definitely there. But like,
sure.
The Chiefs really, because of this current group, I don't think Tyreek Hill cracks it just because he wasn't there long enough. But man, like somebody said Frankie Hammond, I almost feel like
they're trying to get you. But I mean, it's tough because like Lanier's got like he won like 8 All-Pros. He's
also
NFL Man of the Year,
middle linebacker. Yeah, and he was. His nickname was Contact. Like the guy was unbelievable.
I mean, he's locked in there for me. Mahomes is locked in, and Derek Thomas is locked in for me.
Yeah,
so that's what makes it really hard. It's not really hard about Kelce. It's just about if you're talking Mount Rushmore, right? Clear top 10, right? Probably top 7.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, Bobby Bell, for the record, like one of the most underrated players, in my opinion, ever. The guy is a 9-time Pro Bowler, a 6-time first-team All-Pro, Super Bowl champ, 2-time AFL champ, and made the All-Decade team in the 1970s. Like he was and he was also a guy, by the way, that Hank Stramsic could play any position on the field. Willie Lanier, 8 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros. And was also a Walter Payton Man of the Year, as you mentioned, Super Bowl champion. I mean, Bobby Bell is actually more decorated than Willie Lanier, but I tend to agree with you. I think like Lanier is probably the guy. Like he was the man in the middle. But then there's like Buck Buchanan, who was the first black player in either league to ever be drafted number one. Another guy who made 8 Pro Bowls, 4-time first-team All-Pro. Like they just believe it. Like you think of the Chiefs and you're like, oh God, before this current team, like they had a lot of guys. They had a lot of great players.
Yeah, Emmett Thomas. I mean,
yeah, he's another one.
Yeah. So
Jeremy just mentioned Will Shields. I was just going to say Will Shields. My God, the guy's an All-Pro year basically of his career or Pro Bowl. Actually, I want to look that up real quick because I don't want to spew false crap. I know he made a ridiculous amount of Pro Bowls. He was a 12-time Pro Bowler, and between first and second All-Pro 6 times, including the last 5 years of his career. Here's another amazing thing about Will Shields. He never missed a game in 14 years.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
As a guard in the NFL, he never missed a game.
Okay, so I've heard a lot of people talking about this contract, and they're like, yeah, it's 2 more years for Kelce. I wonder if it is because it's like an option, right? It's basically it's basically a player option, unless of course they could cut him as well. But it's like his dead cap number, if he were to be cut this year, is $22 million. Okay, his dead cap number, if the Chiefs cut him, and they would never, I don't think they would ever do that. But if they cut Travis Kelce, if he had some sort of catastrophic injury or something, he's like, I want to retire, whatever, is $2.5 million. The way that this is structured is he gets a ton of money this year, cap number of 19, and then next year he has a prorated signing bonus, a $12 million roster bonus, $250,000 workout bonus, where he can essentially he has the same cap hit, but that's $17 million in cap savings because so much of that money's tied up in the roster bonus.
Yes.
Do you think that if the Chiefs were, say, to win the Super Bowl this year, that he might ride off into the sunset and say, what else do I have to prove? Or does he come back and be like, I've got to come back because I've got 1 year left on my deal. I cash in another, $19 million, and I have a chance to do something completely absurd and try to win 4 Super Bowls in a row.
I think in our heads, it's like this fun narrative. Like if they win again, he rides into the sunset and, goes to a Taylor Swift concert and calls it a day. But like, if you're him, if you're actually Travis Kelce and you still love playing, I don't think he's going to retire. Like, I still just think in his head, like, look, keep going. I mean, once you're done forever. This isn't like if I decide to retire in 20 years, I'm like, yeah, I'll come back and do it again. I mean, sure. You can't. He's done. That's it. I will say this. I do think that is a fair question. Like this year, I never understood it. I was like, he's not retiring. Like he's not ready to go yet. I think it's a fair question. Even though I feel strongly that he would continue playing because I just think that's who he is, it's completely fair. If they win another Super Bowl, they three-peat. I mean, he might just say, hey, look, you know what? What else can we do? Like, there's nothing else for me to do. I've done everything. Yeah. So I think that would at least be, in play that he just says, I'm good. I've got the money. I'm fine. And God knows he can do media and whatever the hell else he wants. Like, if it works out with T Swift, I mean, I don't think they're hurting for money any day soon. So, it's possible, but I just think he's going to keep going, man. He's just he strikes me as one of those guys. Like he will just play until the absolute wheels fall off.
Yeah, and he actually said that that's what he planned to do. Those exact words when asked when he was going to retire. He said, "Till the wheels fall off, baby." And it's another interesting thing to me is that, and I talked about this with Matt Connor, who is editor of Arrowhead Addict and one of our co-hosts on the show, on the emergency podcast after the deal was announced. And Matt made a really good point of like, if you look at some of these numbers, these Tony Gonzalez numbers, he's got a shot at catching, like in the all-time yards, Tony's yards. I think he has a shot. You're looking at maybe 3 seasons he might need to get Tony in yards. Probably not going to catch him in touchdowns. I'm going to pull up Gonzalez numbers.
I got you. So Tony Gonzalez, we're just talking like his entire career, not like just with the Chiefs.
Yes, his entire career.
Okay.
He's at 15
Yeah, 15, 127, and 111 touchdowns. I mean, Kelce's at 11, 328. So he would need about 3,700 yards. I don't think he's going to catch him. I think Kelce probably gets up over 13. I think he probably gets over 13,000. Tight ends, or excuse me, touchdowns. Kelce's at 74. I mean, let's see, his yearly totals. I mean, 10, 5, 11, 9, 12, 5. He's probably, if you're doing the average, I mean, let's say he gets 15 more, 16 more. He's probably going to be right around 13,000 and change and like 90 touchdowns, which is just outrageous. Like, that is one of the all-time careers for anybody who catches the ball. Like, Randy Moss had 15,000 yards. Like, Kelce's like barely behind that. Now they're crazy with Moss. Moss had 156 touchdowns. But like that's the kind of company you're talking about. I mean, you're talking about just like for the record, just to put this into context, like if you think about great tight ends in recent years, you think about a guy like Antonio Gates. Antonio Gates had 116 touchdowns, so Kelce's not going to catch him. But he had 11,841 yards. He'll eclipse that. Jason Witten, who was a damn good tight end for a long time, 11-time Pro Bowler, it's 74 touchdowns, 13,000 yards. Now, Witten also played for 17 seasons, and Gates played for 16 seasons. Like, Kelce is doing all this, and if you take out his rookie year, we played one game, he had a microfracture. He's entering year 11. Like, if Kelce played 17 seasons, my God, he would like eclipse Larry Fitzgerald's numbers. So that's where, to me, Kelce's just ridiculous. I mean, even compared to Gronk. Gronk played 12 years. I respect Gronk to the end of time. Gronk was amazing. Gronk didn't have 9,500 yards, and he finished with 92 touchdowns. Like, Kelce might pass him in touchdowns. He's going to shatter him in yardage. Gronkowski has 621 receptions in his career. Kelce has 907. So it's a whole different. And Kelce made the all-decade team last decade. So did Gronk. They both did. It was the two of them. Kelce's probably going to make this decade, even though he's only going to play half of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's total dominance.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say to Chiefs fans, just enjoy him like this year, because you don't know, man. Like, he could walk for any reason. His health, if it's just hurting, whatever other opportunities, if he feels fulfilled, and you never know when that's going to be, but it's coming. And just enjoy the hell out of Travis Kelce while we have him. We will not see his leg again. All right. Shout out, by the way, to our guy, Doug in Kansas, for the super chat. Great show, gentlemen. Appreciate you, sir. Can they do it? Like, how set up do you think the Chiefs are to do this incredibly insane thing to try to win 3 Super Bowls in a row? I mean, it's astounding. Like, it just, your common sense and the history of the NFL tells you, like, they're not winning the Super Bowl this year. It's not happening. Like, they may not win it for a couple more years, if ever again, when you look back at the history of this game. At the same time, you've got a quarterback who's unlike any that we've ever seen. One of the greatest head coaches of all time. One of the greatest tight ends of all time. All-world defensive tackle Hall of Famer, Chris Jones. And they just won the Super Bowl in a year where, man, I mean, that offense was not great. Those receivers, and they still managed to win the Super Bowl. And you look at the roster now after the draft, they're a better team by leaps and bounds than they were last year. Do they have a shot at this? Like, what do you think the odds are?
I mean, yeah, God, they have a shot at it. I'll go this far with them. And you know me as well as anybody, and certainly most of the listeners know me pretty well at this point. I love history. Like, I am a student. I voraciously read about history, both like outside of sports and certainly in the NFL. First things first, one misnomer. People are always like, no team's ever won 3. That's not true. The Packers did it twice, but one time they did it like from 29 to 31 when the league was totally different. The other time they did do it when they won the last NFL title game, and then they won the first 2 Super Bowls. But the point stands that it is extraordinarily difficult, and nobody's ever won 3 straight Super Bowls. I think this team is as good as a shot at it as anybody ever has. Like, if you go back and you look at a lot of these teams in the past, the Steelers had 2 shots at it in the 70s. They were crushed by injuries in 1976. If they weren't crushed by injuries, they probably would have done it. In 1980, they got old. The Cowboys lost Jimmy Johnson because Jerry Jones was out of his mind. Elway retired off of the Denver teams that won back-to-back Super Bowls. There are a few teams, the Packers were ancient Lombardi left before 1968. The teams that had the best shot at it, that had continuity, were the Dolphins in 74. And they lost that famous Sea of Hands game against the Raiders, which was such a great game that Sports Illustrated actually billed it Super Bowl 8.5 because they figured whoever won that game was going to win the Super Bowl. And they didn't, by the way. The Steelers won. But, I think the Niners in 1990 had an incredible shot at it, and they were dominant. And the Giants went in there and upset them in the NFC title game. Montana got hurt. Craig fumbled late. And then the Pats in 2005. And that was a team that, some of those defensive guys were getting along in the tooth. They had some injuries. This Chiefs team, I would argue, and I saw Jeremy say it earlier in the chat, and I agree with him. If this team stays healthy, this team might win 14 or 15 games. Their schedule is not that hard, in my opinion. And when you look at the Chiefs' schedule this year, their road games are like Carolina and Atlanta, the 3 divisional teams, Buffalo, who at this point they ought to beat Buffalo. San Francisco, which is a tough game. They beat them every time they play them, but fair enough, it's a tough game. Pittsburgh and Cleveland, neither of which have a quarterback. The Chiefs could easily, in those 9 games, go, 7-2? Something like that. And then at home, they're at home. They do play Baltimore. They do play Cincinnati. They do play Houston. They also play the Saints and the Bucks. They play those 3 divisional teams. There's a real world here where the Chiefs are 14-3. I don't think that's when you look at this team right now, and it's an if left tackle shakes out good, what is the weakness of this team? What is the thing that you're that's a huge problem?
There's nothing that's a huge problem, but the biggest probably interior defensive line,
and that has a guy who's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Right, right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Their pass rush, it's Jones, who's absurd. Karlaftis, who you can pencil him in for double digits. Then you have Amenahu and Dana. Then on the second level, you've got Chenal, Tranquil, and Bolton. Then on the third level, I know they lost Need. You still have Watson, McDuffie, Reed, Connor, Cook. Now you add this kid Hicks. You have Joshua Williams. They are just. And the other thing that doesn't get talked about enough, honestly, the kicker never misses anything. So you can just bank on anything from 55 and in almost every year with the guy. I know one year he struggled, but that was it. In the playoffs, he was nails. But the other part of it that never gets brought up when we do all this kind of stuff, when we prognosticate, is the coaching staff.
Yeah, same coach.
They have such an advantage. I've talked to Niners players from the 80s who were coached by Bill Walsh, and they will tell you almost universally, we knew going into games, we had just a huge advantage over whoever we were playing against. We had Bill Walsh. We were just going to be in a position to win the game all the time. So I look at the Chiefs and I will say that, look, would I take them against the field? No, because I think that's a stupid bet. You have 31 other teams, although realistically you have 8 to 10 teams. But if you said to me, you got to take one team for your life, who's winning the Super Bowl this year? Yeah, them. They're better than everyone. But that's the scary thing in the NFL, though, is every game's game 7 in the playoffs. And all it takes is an injury. You have a game, play particularly well. Okay, I'm a Knicks fan. I'm still furious about game 5. Things happen. Things just happen. They do. So that's my biggest fear. But if you said to me the Chiefs are healthy, I feel pretty damn good about it.
Yeah, and shout out to Harv, who just became a member of the AA Starting 11. Appreciate that. Always a great way to support the show is to become a member and talk about it with us in the private Discord and all that stuff. Yeah, man, I'm with you. When you think back on the run, there were so many moments in the years that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl where man, if something went the other way, they don't make it.
That's
you
it.
know, and they're sitting here like every one of them. They were down by double digits in every single Super Bowl that they won. There were moments in the playoffs along the way. Dan Sorensen's playing in the Cleveland Browns game. Remember that one? Like Mahomes is injured. It saves a touchdown. Like the Snead play against Baltimore. Like
that's one of the all-timers. Like look at even like when the year they beat Philadelphia. I mean, Mahomes was on one ankle. He's throwing a Marcus Kemp in the game before that. I mean, to me, one of the most improbable things ever with this team. Chad Henne led him 98 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, now part of that is wonkiness. Part of that though is that's why they are who they are. Like that's why they don't give up. They don't give in. But there also is a randomness to it. I mean, let's be honest about it. They probably, well, I don't want to say probably. They very well may not have won the Super Bowl last year if Tommy Townsend's punt doesn't hit that guy in the ankle. I mean, if that ball's a foot in any other direction, who knows? They couldn't score. They couldn't do anything on offense in that game at that point. And that changed the whole game. And that's not because the Chiefs did anything right. That's because they got lucky and it hit the guy in the ankle. Now, that being said, Jalen Watson did something right. And he was there and he dove on the ball. And the guy had been playing with a torn labrum all year long. So, like, it wasn't all luck. But, like, yeah, part of that, man, luck. Part of that, too, like, you know, they take advantage of their opportunities. They got that ball. They scored on the next play. Yeah. Kyle Shanahan had to have been a football version of an aneurysm and decided to take the ball to start overtime. The Chiefs were like, that's great. We're going to now beat you. Yeah. I mean, it's a combination of getting a little good fortune sometimes and capitalizing. They've done that.
Yeah, I think the difference between the Chiefs and a team like the Bills is the Chiefs put themselves, well, then Mahomes, the Chiefs put themselves in a position to get lucky.
Yes.
And every team benefits from luck, bad luck, good luck, and bad luck. The Chiefs are they're always there. When your floor is the AFC Championship game and you have the personnel that the Chiefs have, you're going to win some Super Bowls. Like, it's just going to happen. Some things are going to bounce your way. And it has for the Chiefs. And that luck, you know, that some of those bounces you could have a 2, 3 year, 4 year stretch here where like they lose in the playoffs because because the guy doesn't shove Mahomes when he's 2 yards out of bounds and put you in field goal range. You know what I mean? Like, these things can happen the other way.
I know we're running, you know, late on time. We're going to go here in a second, but I'll put it this way. And I know, look, I try not to like bring in my other fandoms, but I think this really applies. I'm a huge Devils fan in hockey. As most of you know, a lot of you know. The Devils, when I was a kid, they won 3 Stanley Cups in 9 years, went to 4 finals. The best player on the team, although they had many, was their goaltender, Martin Verderame. And one of the things about that team, invariably, other teams squeezed their sticks tighter when they played them because it was like, well, they're one of the greatest defensive teams of all time, for those unaware. And it got to a point against, you know, playing against them where it was like, if we get an opportunity, we've got to score. We've got to be perfect. We've got to. It is very, very hard to play that way. It is very hard. And I feel like the Chiefs have made teams play like that now. You know, where you get brain farts out of these teams that you don't normally see because they're just so in their own head about, oh my God, what do we do? How do we beat them? Like, I do wonder, like, did Kyle Shanahan, like, would he have done something differently if Mahomes wasn't on the other side of the field? I don't know. You know, maybe he would have. Maybe he would have said, let's kick it. We're not worried about them scoring a touchdown. We have great defense. But, like, I honestly think he looked across the field and was like, that motherfucker's going to score. Like, we have to get out in front. We have to score. Like, I think it makes you panic. The 13 seconds game is the ultimate example of that to me. They just freaked out. Like, Buffalo was playing them like they didn't have timeouts because they're so terrified that they were just going to beat them over the top or some other kind of, like, they just backed up and they freaked. Yeah. You know, Asai hits Mahomes 2 steps out of bounds. Does he hit Mahomes 2 steps out of bounds if Mahomes is Ryan Tannehill? Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. Like, I just think there are games that we've seen over the years with them where they scare the hell out. I mean, to me, the ultimate example of that was the Ravens in the AFC title game. You know, and Jeremy actually just said a great, like, the Ravens were scared to death of them after the first 2 series. They freaked. They became somebody they hadn't been all year long. That team had dominated all year, and the Chiefs went out and put up 2 touchdowns on 2 drives, and the Ravens completely abandoned who they were and just were like, oh God, we got to keep up with them.
Yeah.
I do think it's like all those years with Brady and Belichick where you knew if you went to Foxborough, you had to be perfect to beat them. Perfect. And even then you might not beat them. I think the Chiefs are just in a lot of teams' heads where it's like if we go to play that team, especially in January, you have to be perfect to even have a chance. And it's so damn hard to be perfect. And I think that's where we're at with them.
Yeah, I think it's such a great point. I always think about the line in Catch Me If You Can, where Leonardo DiCaprio is talking to his dad, Christopher Walken. And Christopher Walken says, you know why the Yankees always win? And he says, because they have Mickey Mantle. And he says, no, it's because the other teams can't stop looking at the pinstripes. And I always took that to mean not that they're distracted by the uniforms, but it's the Yankees.
Yes.
You know, they know they're the Yankees, and it messes with their heads.
I mean, I think like to that literal point, that comeback by the Red Sox in 2004, I literally think one of the biggest reasons they came back was they got down 0-3, and it was like, well, there's no pressure. Like no one thinks we're ever going to win this thing.
Yeah.
And then then all the pressure mounted on the Yankees. Like, you know, I think that's part of how the Chiefs won their first Super Bowl with this team. Like they got down 24-0 with Mahomes. I think there was an element of like, well, what the hell now? Like, let's just go out and rip it, you know? Like, and then all of a sudden it started to just cascade and they took off. And then there's no pressure on you after that because you've won and you've kind of exercised all these demons. I just think with the Chiefs, they scare the hell out of other teams. They instill fear in a way that you don't normally see fear instilled into professional athletes. But the teams are scared of them. That's why, honestly, to give the Bengals credit, I think the Bengals are the toughest team for the Chiefs sometimes. Because the Bengals, to their credit, do not get rattled. They don't. Like, now Osai made a dumb play, but like the Bengals, Burrow has the same mentality Mahomes does, so they're very tough-minded. They stay in it. Anarumo's a great defensive coach. Like, the Bills, I feel like whenever the Chiefs play them, when it comes down to it, the Bills are going to blink. They just are. Like, something's going to happen. The Bills are going to blink. The Ravens are scared to death of them. Every time they play them, the Ravens, something happens. Like, I just think the Chiefs have shown that over the years.
Yeah, they have a Super Bowl mystique, and we'll see if they can do it again. Listen, we'll be here next week. The schedule is going to probably come out next Thursday. I'll be here with Adam Best. We'll have our regular shows on Tuesday and Wednesday, so make sure you check that out. Also, special, thing we're doing off on the side is we've ranked the greatest 50 Chiefs of all time, and we've been recording that. So we're going to be releasing that at some point during the summer, spring or summer. So that's going to be a lot of fun for you guys to check out. So a lot of great stuff. And make sure you head over on to sportsillustrated.com to read all of Matt's work. I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say on the schedule getting released, all these primetime games and all that stuff. Anything special coming out over at SI?
I am going to be the one who's like trying to break schedule news for Sports Illustrated next Thursday, but I'll also be putting together like a live document so you can check. Like if you're trying to like find like all the leaks, like I've got you covered, and I hopefully will leak some of it. So all that's going on. You can find me here all the time, as you mentioned, Patrick. I'm going to be here all the time. It's starting in a few weeks, every Thursday. You can check out my written work at SI. You can check me out here on podcasts and also on the Matt Verderame show on Patreon, where I am talking Chiefs. Although, in fact, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to interview Sterling Holmes for tomorrow's episode. So
nice.
Have a little AA crossover. We'll be doing plenty of that as the year goes on with you, Sterling, Matt Connor, Adam, everybody. So, feel free to give it a subscription, give it a like. Check it out.
Good stuff. Thank you so much to all of our members, anybody who was watching on YouTube today, and of course you audio listeners. We'll never forget about you. You guys are the best. Shout out to producer Richard for getting us up and running. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.